for this week's media demonstration video, we're going back in time about 165 million years to color this Stegosaurus in with colored pencils and chalk pastel. So before we start, I just want to talk about a couple of things. So first of all, this is a media demonstration video, and this is something you can share with your friends. They can see how I use these supplies. It's also for you, so you can get a close-up look at how to use these supplies, but it's a great way to show your friends about the art lessons, and you can also encourage your friends to sign up. So this is just something fun you can share, and when you share, if you haven't gotten one already, you're going to get a magnet, guys. The only way I'm going to know that you shared is if you tell me in class, okay? Or if your parents email me or something. But I have about 50 of these magnets left out of 100, so I have been mailing them out. Like I said, if you want one, you know what to do. Help me out, and I'll be super happy to mail you one. All right, guys, so when you use colored pencils, okay, sometimes you need to sharpen them. And so I've told you before, if you've watched these other videos, that you should never use a regular electric pencil sharpener because the wax in these pencils will fill up the teeth in the mechanism inside of it, and it will eventually not work anymore at all. But this is not a regular electric pencil sharpener, guys. This is the Orbit, and it has a titanium blade. It is designed for this, so check it out. It's like a miracle. And you can sharpen all of your pencils over and over again. If you like that, these are available. I got this, I think, at Sam's Club, and it's about $15, I think, but it's worth it for me because I have literally hundreds of pencils to sharpen. So there's that. But I always still recommend this. If you don't have that, use this instead. The old manual sharpener, so great. It's old-fashioned, works great. Look at this. I'm going to probably have this literally for the rest of my life, and I love that. I like things that aren't wasteful, and I like things that last a long time. So if those things are important to you too, you might want to just consider getting a manual sharpener. So when we use chalk pastel, which I've done before if you've seen those videos, you're going to need a couple of things. First of all, you're going to need a paper plate and some cotton balls and at least one Q-tip because there's lots of little nooks and crannies in this drawing today, so you want that. The chalk pastel, we don't need to get it out just yet, but I just wanted you to see it. So as you can see, again, this thing can be used until they literally disappear. Very low waste. I think that's great. And then when it's all done, you can recycle the container it comes in. So I'll talk more about that later. The very last thing we're going to do is spray it with hairspray. This is the one I like the most because it doesn't stink really bad. And at the very end, what it does is the hairspray keeps the chalk dust stuck to the paper. So again, I'll bring that out later, but for now, it's just about time to get started with our colored pencils. Last but not least, guys, if you want to do anything with, like add any other lines or details, do it with a Sharpie before you start coloring. Do not start coloring and then add with the Sharpie. It's just a good habit to be done with the Sharpie, have it closed up tight so it's ready for next time. Otherwise, it gets messed up. Sometimes it's okay with a pencil, but even then, there's still wax in a pencil and it can kind of mess up the tip of the Sharpie. And you definitely don't want to use a Sharpie over hairspray once it's been sprayed. So, for example, if you have any details you want to add them now before you start coloring. And so I'm not going to add a lot of details. I'm just going to add a few to show you what I mean. I'm going to add a few scales here and there because this is technically a giant lizard, so I'm adding a few scales just to show you what I mean about the details. So I'm done with that for now. It's time to get started. So I am going to start out and just do a couple things, and then I'm going to do the most of it in time lapse, and I'll come back and do a conclusion like I always do. So I just wanted to get my pencils out. I think it's really smart to kind of just see what you have. Sometimes if you leave them in the jar, you really don't even think about all the choices that you do have. And so, as you can see, my pencils, some of them have gotten shorter and shorter, and that's because I've been using them and sharpening them. So now that I have out the colors I want, it's time to kind of get started. One of the reasons a dinosaur is so much fun is we don't know what color they were. We have an idea because we have bones to look at what size they were and what, shape they might have been, but we have no idea what color they were, and so they're so much fun. All right, guys, so let's get going with our colored pencils. Now, this dinosaur can be absolutely any color like I just said. So I think I don't know why, but I just kind of feel like having a pink dinosaur. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of get started with my colored pencil. And what I want to show you before we go into time lapse is an important thing. So what you don't want to do is color in all these different directions. Like there's, you can do this sort of like scribble kind of coloring, and that's a scribble. Don't do that. You can also try very hard just to kind of make it always go in one direction and every single line goes in the same direction, and that's okay too. It's not a bad idea. But what I want to talk about is when you go in the direction of your line. Do you see how these lines are kind of softly curving a little bit? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to color, but I'm going to go in the direction of my lines. And so if my lines curve a little bit, I want my colored pencil lines to curve in the same kind of way. And so I'm just going to do this a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you how also you can get some blending with colored pencils. And so that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And so by coloring, you see I'm not pressing super hard, and I'm not filling in the entire thing yet because I'm going to use another color to blend. But what I am doing is I'm continuously going in the same direction as my line, and that is a very important part. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, and I want this to be sort of a pinkish purple. So I'm going to test my color first. That's perfect. And I'm going to start working on layering. Layering is when you put one thing on top of another, but it also kind of lets it mix and blend a little bit. So it just looks really pretty and really cool. One thing I want to make sure you guys know about with colored pencils, guys, is like I've said dozens of times, they're made with wax. But if you color all the way down to the wooden part of the pencil without taking a break to sharpen it a little bit, you are going to start scratching your paper and digging little grooves into your paper, which are not going to look so great when you color over them. It makes literally marks on your paper that you cannot get rid of. So always stop yourself and sharpen it just a little bit. But the other side of that coin is if you sharpen it too much, like this I did just to show you, just for fun at one time in the electric sharpener. Look how sharp that is. It's really, really pointy. And so with a wax pencil, they're kind of soft and they're a little bit breakable. So if the tip is too long and pointy, it's going to be hard to color with it, and it'll probably break, or it might even fall out. And those are two things that are a real bummer when you're using colored pencils. So the perfect tip is sort of medium. And so this is now a light pink. I'm just going to go over like this just to show you what I'm talking about. So I've got the darker pink, I've got the purple, now I'm going over with a lighter pink. And I'm not trying to really press too hard, I'm just sort of continuing to go in the direction of my line. And it just looks good. It looks really good, and it's very pretty. So, all right, guys. Well, I think you get the idea. You don't have to see me color every single tiny speck of this. I'm going to go into time lapse. Before I do, though, real quick, I've mentioned this before as well. This is called a colorless blender. This is a colored pencil with no color, but it's the same material. It's not exactly white. It's clear. As you can see, you can't really see it. But what it does is it adds another layer to your colored pencil, and to where you have put the colored pencil on your paper, I should say. And what you do is this is I am pressing quite hard with this now. And what that does is it just does what it says. It blends. It's a blender. So it's a colorless blender. So it's not adding color, but it is adding more wax, and that wax is mixing those colors together. So this is not something you have to have. It's something that if you have is really cool to have, but you don't have to have it. But if you don't have it, you can still get these wonderful shades and colors anyway. All right, guys, I'm going to do this in time lapse, and then when I come back, we'll talk about the conclusion. Here we go. So as you can see, I finished my drawing with chalk pastel, and I just wanted to show you a couple of little things. So I used my black Prismacolor pencil when I did the black on the volcano and in the smoke up above it. Prismacolor pencils are super, they're great, they're wonderful for smudging, so they're great for a lot of things, but I just want to show you that this will create a lovely smudgy kind of thing, so you can use this to your advantage when you're coloring things like smoke and creating like lines on volcanoes and things like that. It looks really cool. So you don't have to have a black Prismacolor pencil, but if you already have one because you have it for the oil pastels in my class, that's what I recommend, then use it for certain things on your color pencil drawings. It just looks really cool. Also, the colorless blender, I've got it ready here. I just wanted to show you I added some yellows into the pinks and some deeper purples, and I wanted it to look really unusual. This is supposed to be 165 million years ago after all. So I've colored the grass with pencil and the pine needles and the tree bark and some of the land back there, but I just wanted to show you with this colorless blender, it is okay to go over. If you've already hairsprayed it like I did, you can use the colorless blender then on top if you want to. So if at any time you want to go back and work on, you know, your colored pencil marks here and use your blender to kind of mix it all together, that's a great thing to do. It just makes it look a little bit more smooth, a little more blended. So this is just something to consider, not required. I think it's a nice touch. As you can see, it's mixing these pinks really nicely for me. So it's just something to think about. So the other thing, final thing, is when I used my chalk pastel, I put the colors on my plate. I wanted it to seem kind of like hazy and prehistoric. And I just used cotton balls. I didn't even use my Q-tip. So sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. But it ended up looking great. I hope you enjoyed this today, friends. I know I did. I'll just see you next time.